Good day to each and everyone, especially to our professor, Dr. Christina A. Cabillas. So I am Jen Mallory P. Manatad. I am your discussant on the history of educational planning in the Philippines. This video lecture is a partial fulfillment of the requirement in MAED 203 of the Graduate Studies of the Caraga State University under Dr. Christina A. Cabillas. But before we start, let us first learn some easy and fast ways or techniques of coping stress.
A Japanese method to relax in 5 minutes. Every day you are stressed about too many things: work, relationship, family, bills, other people's opinions. A certain amount of stress is normal and even necessary, but excessive stress can take a toll on your life and health. You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you next. You can get rid of stress in no time at all. All you need to cope with anxiety and headache is just one method, a unique ancient Japanese technique. It takes less than 5 minutes and can be done about anywhere. To practice the technique, you should first understand that each finger of your hand represents a different feeling or attitude. Let's see exactly what. Here's your hand: thumb, index, middle, ring, and pinky. The thumb helps combat emotions like anxiety and worry. The index can help you combat fear. The middle finger helps you control anger and resentment. The ring finger can help you fight depression and sadness. Also, it's responsible for making you more decisive. And the pinky helps to calm anxiety and increases optimism and confidence. This finger represents self-esteem. Let's repeat it again. Thumb, anxiety. Index, fear. Middle, anger. Ring, sadness. Pinky, self-esteem. Keep repeating it till you remember it. Now let's see how this unusual method works. To harmonize the life energy in the body, grasp the finger with the opposite hand, wrapping all the fingers and thumb around it. Now hold each finger for 1 to 2 minutes. You will know it's working when you feel a pulsating sensation. If you want to calm your mind, slightly press in the center of the palm with the thumb of the opposite hand and hold it for at least 1 minute. It will help you relieve stress, get rid of negative thoughts, and get peace of mind in the middle of the hustle and bustle. Practice this technique every day to stay calm and reestablish the balance within yourself. Remember that there are many other ways to cope with stress: exercise, yoga, massage, meeting friends, good music, and others. However, this Japanese technique is one of the best methods to revive yourself quickly. This method absolutely works wonders for everyone, regardless of age and gender. Have you already tried it? How did it work for you?
Now, let's learn some important or significant facts in the past. Let's talk about the history of educational planning in the Philippines. Let's start with a short video giving you a recap or review on what is an educational planning.
Malia has dreams, big dreams. To achieve them, she must have access to a quality education. This is her fundamental right. Beyond this classroom, a whole system unfolds from pre-primary to adult learning. Its goal? To help Malia and her peers build a bright future. An education system includes everything from the human resources to the policies and financing that supports it. But this system doesn't just appear like magic. Without planning, the whole education system is threatened, along with Malia's dreams. So what is educational planning? It starts with all of the relevant actors coming together to create a vision for education. They anticipate the future with the resources of today. Different tools are used throughout the planning process to highlight any problem areas and help with financing, and resource allocation. At the end, the stakeholders have turned the vision into a plan of action for Malia and her peers. But let's start now, because Malia can't wait. The government and education officials must lead the way and believe in the plan. It must also stay responsive to the local context, such as the geography or demography of the local population. And what if a natural disaster hits or a conflict erupts? Planning for resilience allows the system to stay afloat. When an education system is carefully planned, the fate of millions of children is protected, and Malia can build the life of her dreams.
According to the Department of Education, today's educational planning can claim an unbroken history even before the establishment of our formal education. Before, education system of the Philippines is far different from the system we have today. Now, even if you ask your grandparents, they can testify the gap of development between the present time and before's system of education. Now, in this lecture, we will be talking about how educational planning started and the series of development brought about by the organizations firstly organized. During the pre-Spanish era and the period of more than 4 centuries, when the Philippines was in the possession of Spain and the United States, there was a long routine sort of educational planning. Now we all know that our educational system had been greatly influenced by the post-colonial history. Now with the coming of different colonizers, regardless of what their goals of educating our Filipino ancestors, they managed to provide education to us. Despite being unstructured, unreformed, and devoid educational system, it had undergone educational planning. However, it was not visible enough compared to how visible educational planning activities we have in the present time. At a minimum, they had to estimate how many students there would be, how many classrooms, teachers, desks, and books would be needed to serve them adequately, how much money this would require, where the money would come from, how and when it would be spent. Now, this process was educational planning, which was taken for granted as a normal part of the school administrator's job. Much more in some instances, it was abused that it led to wasteful imbalances of our much limited school inputs. Now let's proceed to the organizations and overall process of developmental planning. So the history of educational planning started in 1962. So in 1962, President Diosdado Macapagal created the Program Implementation Agency by virtue of Executive Order Number 17, which is tasked with providing staff worked on socio-economic programs for the President. So the role of PIA, or the Program Implementation Agency, is to meet the need for an implementing authority to push through the developmental plans. So it was created um, to do the implementation or to push through with the developmental plans of or any programs that is created for the purpose of development or national development. Now in 1966, this was abolished, or the PIA, or the Program Implementation Agency, was abolished by President Ferdinand E. Marcos by virtue of Executive Order No. 8 Series of 1966 and replaced with the Presidential Economic Staff, which is tasked with providing staff support on economic matters. However, these offices were primarily centered on economic planning, and functions would eventually be absorbed by the National Economic Development Authority, or the NEDA. So later we will talk about the creation, or what is the role of NEDA in education. So in 1966, PIA was changed to PES. Now, PES is a Presidential Economic Staff. Now, these two agencies, the NEC and the PES, so later we'll talk about the NEC, or the National Economic Council. So these two, the one on planning and the other on programming, stood head above all other government executive departments, corporations, financial institutions, chartered cities, and local governments in matters pertaining to these two functions. So, in the same year, specifically in December 8, 1966, created the Manpower Development Council under the responsibility of assessing under the Office of the President of the Philippines to undertake the responsibility of assessing human resources and forecasting the needs for trained personnel at various occupational levels. So this MDC was assigned to oversee or to assess the human resources in the personnel of the council to see if this personnel needs training or more training depending on their various occupational levels. Now, as I have mentioned earlier, that these offices, or the PES, were primarily centered on economic planning, and their functions would eventually be absorbed by the National Economic Development Authority, or the NEDA, when it was established to replace the National Economic Council. With the proclamation of martial law in 1972 in the implementation of the Integrated Reorganizational Plan. Now this NEDA was created for the purpose of recommending continuing coordinated and fully integrated social economic plans and programs. So this time we already have NEDA, or the National Economic and Development Authority. So what's the role, or what's the purpose of creating this organization, or this council? So this is for the purpose of recommending continuing coordinated and fully integrated social and economic plans and programs, for overseeing government development programs, and for national development planning and coordination of programs implementation. So, uh, in the previous organizations, such as the PIA, which is only assigned to the implementation or pushing through the development, and also the PES, which is only focused on the economic planning. So NEDA includes these organizations, which leads to abolishing those organizations. So it is included already in the NEDA. So this NEDA is a comprehensive organization which will um, be coordinated or be integrated to social, economic, and other programs. So other government development programs. So this NEDA is primarily charged with the task of overseeing government development programs, which is a central agency for national development planning and coordination of program implementation. So after the creation of the National Economic and Development Authority, or the NEDA, in 1972, was the 1993 Commonwealth Act No. 2. So in 1993, by virtue of the Commonwealth Act Number 2, which created the National Economic Council, or the NEC, which was approved or which was signed by President Manuel A. Quezon. So NEC is a central authority responsible for the formulation of definite and consistent national economic policies and the preparation of comprehensive economic and social development plan. So the NEC is the one assigned to responsible for the formation or the creation of um, clearly stated and comprehensive economic policies and programs for the economic and social development. Now, so the NEC was basically an advisory body with no executive functions, with the exception of foreign aid. Now, in order to coordinate with the implementation development projects, a development council composed of heads of executive departments concerned with economic and social development, head of major government agencies, and legislative leader. So this council was presided over by the president himself, who required the members to submit in person progress reports on the different major projects. So the chairman of the NEC acted as executive secretary of the department or development council. So the secretariat of the NEC had an integrated social development division located at the office of the national planning, which also dealt with education. So the NEC is not the one who will execute the policies or the programs or projects. So the task of the NEC, since it stood above all other governments, departments. So NEC is the one who will coordinate with other departments for the implementation of these projects, programs, or policies. These four groups under the National Education Council usually concerns on the formulation of any set of policies or any program in the council. So these are the council proper, the technical staff for the council, other departments, offices, and agencies of the government and the private sector. So who are these under the council proper? So this composed of the congressional members, the appointive members from the executive branch, and the representatives from the private sectors. And under also the technical staff for the council, composed of members from its three main offices, which are the National Planning, Foreign Aid Coordination, and Statistical Coordination and Standards. The third group is other departments or offices and agencies of the governments, which composed of the Budget Commission, the Central Bank, Department of Finance, and Presidential Economic Staff. And the last group is the private sector. Now, as you can see, as years go by, different organizations have been created. Now, from a simple role given to more complex or comprehensive role has been absorbed by those organizations created. Now, together with the history of the educational system in the Philippines, other sectors also, not only in education, has been created. Now, it is a coordinated policies, or it is a coordinated programs created by the government for the purpose of national development. Now, the law required approval by the President of both policies and programs of the Council before they could be implemented by the government's departments, offices, and agencies. So before a program and policy be put to action or be implemented, it should be approved by the president himself. Now, the National Economic Council was under the office of the president and headed by the chairman with cabinet rank. He was directly responsible to the president of the Philippines. So aside from the NEC, there were planning committees set up in some of the departments or agencies of the government. Provincial economic planning was set under the auspices of the defunct emergency administration. Now, the NEC coordinated the planning activities of these agencies. Now, on regional level, there were regional development authorities assigned for the implementation of this program and policies. On local level, auspices of the defunct emergency administration are also tasked to or for the implementation of this program and policies. Ends my discussion. So the second part of this topic will be discussed by my co-discussant. I hope you learned something and thank you for listening.